Hello and welcome to New Wave Global. You are watching Unraveled, and I'm your host, Marvi Sirmed. Tonight, we dive deep into the increasingly complex and strained relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan, a relationship that has been inextricably tied to the rise of the Taliban on both sides of the Durand Line. In the years since the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan, Pakistan has found itself grappling with a rapidly deteriorating security situation at home. The surge in attacks by the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, who draw inspiration and support from their ideological cousins in Afghanistan, has created severe challenges for Islamabad. Despite Pakistan's initial hopes that the Afghan Taliban would curb the activities of the TTP, the reality has been starkly different. The TTP has not only intensified its operations, but has also benefited from the Afghan Taliban's apparent reluctance or inability to rein them in. This evolving scenario raises critical questions about the strategic calculus of Pakistan's security establishment. Has the historical reliance on the Taliban as a strategic asset backfired, leading to an unmanageable blowback? Moreover, with the regional powers like China, Russia, and even India reconfiguring their approach to Afghanistan, what does this mean for Pakistan's influence in Kabul? To explore these pressing issues, I'm joined by a distinguished guest tonight, General retired Asad Durrani, former head of Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence. With his vast experience and deep insights into Pakistan's security dynamics, we will attempt to unravel the complexities of Pakistan Afghanistan relations in this new era. General Durrani, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're very warm welcome.
Welcome.
Uh, Jal Saab, Pakistan initially supported the Afghan Taliban in the belief that they would help secure our western border and act as bulwark against India, securing our eastern border as well eventually. Given the surge in TTP attacks from Afghan soil, don't you think this strategy it was fundamentally flawed?
Let me present another narrative.
Mhm.
You see, Pakistan's policy has been very simple as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Anyone who resisted foreign occupation, the Mujahideen during the Soviet days, and the Taliban and their allies during the American occupation, were going to be helped by us. Not because one was very fond of them, but they were the only people who had a chance to get the country liberated from foreign occupation. Because if the foreign troops are there, the debris continues to fall on Pakistan. This is inherent in Afghans. They would, they will inevitably, some of them, most of them, at least the tribesmen, would continue to fight and the debris. So that has been our policy right from the beginning. One was not expecting, or one should not have even expected that once Mujahideen or the Taliban come back to power, they succeed in their war, and after that they'll start, eating from our hands or doing whatever we want to. That is number one. Secondly, what we want from the Taliban, I mean, making life just complex without any reason. What we want from the Taliban, they cannot deliver. The demand was hand over TTP to us. It's not possible in a country like Pakistan to hound 7,000 people and round them up, put them in a cage, and hand them over across the borders. Physically not possible. In their tradition, also, anyone who is helpless would not be extradited, would not be handed over to anyone else. Just look at what they had to do because of some of it was not going to be handed over to the Americans because of their traditions. 20 years of war, they fought just because of that legacy. In this particular case, their actually response to us is the same as ours used to be to the Americans. We cannot. We also said the same thing that if there are pro-Taliban forces on our side, we cannot run them up. We cannot physically take care of them, especially because they had plenty of sympathy on the side of the border. But once they go across the Durand line, you're a big power. The NATO is there. Get hold of them. Do whatever you want. But on our side, it is not possible. Physically not possible. All those people who go across will take them. Similarly, this is what they have been saying right from the beginning. TTP, we cannot. As I said, we cannot. But once they go there, there are your people. They used to be there. You took action against them. Do that again. Now, this is what is, the assumption has been wrong that once it will happen, after that, the Taliban would do whatever they want. Taliban would not do anything which is against their tradition, which is physically not. So, on this subject, I think their stand is reasonable. Our people who are handling the Taliban, they have found any number of reasons to accuse the Taliban. Number one, they think that it was going to be done as they wanted. That was not really possible. But I think more importantly, we just find any number of reasons to, rationalize our inability to take care of a few thousand people.
To take care of?
A few thousand people. Once they'll come out, and the state of Pakistan is absolutely capable of getting hold of them and dealing with them like one should be dealing with such people. Not necessarily, not always, or not all of them with force, but there are a number of ways available, many instruments available to us, like the teaching in the so-called coin is how do you deal with them? We can do that. But since, because of the inefficiency here of the instrument, one has seen, what happens in Balochistan, a few people, few hundred, maximum a couple of thousand people for the last 6 or 7 decades, we don't seem to be getting the hang of it. So this is that inability for which we are accusing someone else.
But Jain Saab, in the first part of your response, you talked about the foreign occupation against which the Afghan Taliban were fighting, and you are saying that Pakistan was helping them doing so, but Pakistan was also helping those quote unquote foreign occupiers. Pakistan was hand in hand with them. So, don't you think this was a kind of a double speak and a double game in which Pakistan involved itself?
Pakistan was not helping the occupiers. People may have made symbolic statements because of the overall environment. It's a very powerful military that is sitting there. The rest of the world, America, supported by NATO countries or by anyone, and you say that we will help you fight so-called terrorism. This is a statement that people had to make, perhaps, because otherwise it would have become very difficult if we say, no, we are now with the Taliban and we're going to fight. So they said that thing. And I don't think that at any stage we gave them the type of help they wanted, and they understood that. I think throughout the 20 years, it's such a long period, they knew that we were not providing them the type of support. For example, as I said, if they were on our side, we didn't fight them. We didn't go in and give them any information because our interest was with to support them, to help them win the war of liberation. Is too complex for people to understand. There are enough number of people in the United States who understood that. Michael Flynn, Michael Flynn absolutely agreed with me on a particular program that both the countries, United States and Pakistan, were following their own national or their own interests. He described it as selfish self-interest in that country. So it was in our interest that foreign forces leave, and for that whatever help one could go. I mean, one could not send military forces or aircraft, but whatever help one could give, we did not take any action once they were here. Their sanctuaries were not attacked. And once we were there were plenty of sympathizers who joined them, and we did not stop any.
I mean, this doesn't add up so much, Ansab. For example, we are you saying that Pakistan did not help foreign occupiers, your language, uh,
Yes.
USA, NATO forces, in hunting down Taliban? And at the same time, we were providing sanctuaries to Afghan Taliban on our soil. We were taking money from Afghanistan, from USA, to do what? I mean, to fight Taliban. No.
Yeah, Taliban, the money that we took, I mean, it was in the American interest to give us that money for a number of reasons. And I can count so many. And I can also think why our people took that money because of certain conflicts that we had. But talking about money, the money was not going to win the American our loyalty or interest. The Taliban took more money from the American, from NATO forces than Pakistan did. Every year, $500 million were flowing into the, were going to the Taliban, flowing out of the NATO kitty. Now, that is what was happening for security and so on and so forth.
So there goes your narrative of fighting foreign occupiers. They were taking money from foreign
They
occupiers.
were taking because that is their cleverness. They provided security, got money. They were getting their cut to the development fund. That is how you survive for 20 years fighting an alliance like that. You take money, you also fight, you provide security. But the fighting, the so-called hybrid war, is not unidirectional. It has many instruments you play. And similarly, if Pakistan took money on the protection of its our infrastructure is being damaged, or because of certain conflicts that we had, or because we are allowing aid to flow through our territory, that was, I think, absolutely legitimate money that one took. But as I said, basically, this money was not going to make us, sacrifice our aims. We were not going to sell our business because of that. This is the
Uh,
game. This is the way wars are fought anywhere, especially nowadays because of the asymmetric dimensions of not only warfare but the people who fight it. This is absolute normal, absolute nation. I have already said in another interview that the aim, as far as the money was concerned, take the maximum money that you can, but do the minimum for
I'm sure that the analysis of benefit versus loss, the pros and cons of supporting Taliban, providing them sanctuaries, must have been done by the military and the and ISI. But some of us, the liberal commentators and observers, have been, have been saying for a long time, the blowback from supporting the Taliban, as you see, is now fueling, it has been fueling for some time, radicalization within Pakistan itself. Do you think the ISI underestimated the long-term domestic risks of this Afghan strategy?
I think the ultimate aim was to get rid of the occupation. I mean, that goes without saying. If you recall, there was a time after the Soviets went back, someone, I think the Scowcroft or someone, was asked, look, you people funded some militants to fight the Soviets, and now don't you think that the cost has been so much because such people who are training in Afghanistan, fighting, the Soviets, are all over the place? And the answer was, well, that's the collateral damage that one had to take care of. Because the big aim was get the Soviets out of Afghanistan and ultimately, the Soviet thing collapsed. In our case, getting rid of the foreigners was more important. Some blowback, people call it blowback, and I said so much of this blowback is because of our own flawed thinking. But otherwise, yes, some cost had to be paid. It was not going to come gratis to us. that we help them, they gone, and after that it's all honky dory, and we did not, and we would not have to pay any price. But we had to pay. In fact, the price that we paid was more than so-called blowback. The fighting did affect the economy here. It also caused many casualties here. Drones killed very many people. So this tightrope walking that we did over 20 years, you said Army ISI, yes, basically, yes, that was the forefront, but this was also the government policies. And understandably so. Is anyone going to tell me that once it is happening in Afghanistan, we would simply sit back and see the resistance there being demolished, and after that, you're confronted with what? A superpower, Soviets, or the Americans sitting on the western border, eastern border is already with India, and so the poor Pakistan gets sandwiched or has fallen in the jaws of a nutcracker, as you would say. That was the primary aim or concern. Get them out, and we will take care of whatever will happen. And it was so easy to take care of, if you remember, immediately after the NATO's withdrawal.
Mm.
For some time, Afghanistan was at peace. We didn't have any problem with them, people coming, going. And not only us, look as how all others, so many others have gone to Afghanistan to find out what they can now, how can they work with the Taliban, Americans included, China and Russia in any case there, Iran, India has gone there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody goes because now they are the people, they are the game in town. And so you play that. Only country that does not seem to have understood how to play the new game is the one that has been their neighbor, one has been working with them for such a long time. And certainly we find, well, hand over the TTP, otherwise we are going to be on war path. And to top it all, another thing that we did, which probably I consider to be one of the very bad decisions was, well, let's also throw the Afghan refugees back. 20, 30 years of investment in these people. And
Yes.
after that, some people wanted to send them back. Those people who grew up here, who not known any other country. I mean, you've been dealing with humanitarian problems. Can you imagine what happens to such people, such youngsters, studying in schools, and you suddenly find that we have to now leave, go to a country about which they had no idea and which is actually war affected. So that type of that type of measures or actions, someone like me is not going to support.
So you're saying that the radicalization that happened because of this strategy in Pakistan, and especially in Pakistan military, within the ranks of the military, that was, we should just take it as collateral damage.
I don't know how the radicalization is talked about, as if before the Soviets came in, it was all liberal here in Pakistan and nothing was wrong and we were very enlightened and no weapons here and no drugs here. So these things had been happening, and if some people who think because of that jihad got either radicalized or militarized, it is still our job to take care of that. But that is the price that one had to be ready to pay if you are going to achieve that bigger objective. For the Afghans, this objective is supreme. They don't really care what happens to anything else as long as they can free themselves from, from an occupation like this. And so Pakistan actually, in that sense, paid a much smaller price. The dividend, oh yes, the dividends are much larger. We have now a region in which we, in the regional countries, the neighboring countries of Afghanistan, can come together and work out so many different things, including, the so-called connectivity, the CPECs, the inter-regional trade, reaching out to South Asia, Central Asia that we wanted. All that became possible because Afghanistan is free again.
I mean, uh, do you honestly believe that things are better in the region because Afghanistan is under Taliban now? Taliban hardly represent the whole of Afghanistan, let alone the whole of Pashtuns. There are many Pashtuns in Afghanistan. There are many non-Pashtuns in Afghanistan who have been fighting against Taliban. They do not consider them their representatives, and Afghanistan, calling Afghanistan free under Taliban is, I think, don't you think it's an insult to Afghan women and Afghan minorities?
Yes, 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 yes. It is. It's very uncomfortable. But the point is that if they are the ones who, after 20 years, win the war, and they have won the war, has there been any doubt, then they are the de facto rulers there for a period of time. How it will turn out, that I do not know. But then, in what country, may I ask you, any government gets support of all sections of people? Would the Americans' occupation at that time, the regime that the Americans had installed, were they supported by people? What was the security situation at that time? The bombing, etc., that used to take place, the marriages, parties that were bombed. Which country, including, I do not know, United States is such a polarized country, which country is going to get, support from everyone? India, we are told, well, the Modi's support is only 33%. Saudi Arabia, we have another problem. In Pakistan itself, how many people would say that this government is the one that we want, or that government was the one that we wanted? So that difference is very natural in a country, especially after the war. The spoils of war go to the victors. And now it's going to be then, as far as the region is concerned, yes, the first part of your question, I think the region, as I said, is much better off now. If, like the other regional countries have shown how they are working with the Taliban, Chinese are the first one to reach out there. The Russians are there. The Iranians are much more clever.
Mhm.
As I said, now, if these are the ones, that means the regional situation has a potential which in 20 years or the service was there, it did not exist at that time, that the countries here in this area could join hands. At least now the possibility is there.
Okay, let me ask it from a different angle.
Mhm.
So Pakistan has long viewed the Taliban as strategic asset, you know, uh, particularly against India. I mean, but with the Taliban now engaging more openly with India, has Pakistan's strategic calculus backfired or, slightly impacted negatively or not?
Calling, calling the Taliban Afghans or Mujahideen strategic as radicalization.
No,
Actually,
you don't think they were our strategic
no,
assets.
I don't know.
We have been
Japan has,
calling them our fifth province.
I mean, those who called Prince Charles, I haven't met them. And some people may have perceived, some people may have heard an odd man saying that. The people who dealt with Afghans and the country never called it either their fifth province, or said that they're going to be subjugated by us, or they will play our tune, or even saying strategic depth was again a flawed expression, meant something else, and people get it. But yes, people there, once they're free, they are your assets. And historically, we are not going to come and tell them that, look, you will not deal with India. They have dealt with India in before, and India also has a right to deal with it. And that is what they have been doing all along, except with the Soviets or the Soviets. At that time, they were, because of their stance, they were almost absent from Afghanistan. But after that, they have been there. During the Taliban's first regime, they were there, and during the American presence there, India actually had a bigger or had a higher profile than any other country in the region. But this still does not mean that because of this, which is a legitimate and which is an understandable development, that we should not have done it. You pursue an aim because that you think is supreme, and after that you take care of whatever the fallout.
Okay, looking back, I mean, What do you think of? Do you really think that Pakistan has never used non-state actors as strategic assets?
All, all
We
using non-state actor is the right of which government does not use. Black waters were there. Mukti Bahanis, India employed them in.
Yeah, so we have also, which means we have also used, but ultimately,
What
don't you think it has compromised our national security further? And should there be reassessment of this approach?
you use non-state actors because we may not have enough of normal security. Yes. And secondly, these can become very effective. Look at Israel today. Who is more effective there on the side of the Gazans? All non-state actors. Only the Yamanis, the Houthis, the Hezbollahs, and so on and so forth. The states are twiddling their thumb because they are, for some reason or the other, they feel paralyzed. They think that if they did something, so the non-state actors actually are a useful tool. You only have to know how to use them. In our case, now that we're talking about non-state actors, Pakistan is being kept afloat
Hmm.
by non-state actors. They work in the field of health care, education, providing security. Non-state, I call them because they are not under official control. Some of them would not even pay taxes, otherwise, they will not be able to do all those things. So the sub-state actors, if you like to call them, they become an asset on a number of occasions like this one, but they also provide for us, for example, right now, an inefficient state that cannot, do whatever a normal state can do. So many facilities that are providing by non-state sectors. So that's not just calling them non-state actors in a way in which it's one says, "My goodness, something will happen," and some calamity will befall on us. That is the wrong way of looking at it.
Okay, so going back to Taliban now, do you believe there's still room for Pakistan to assert influence over the Taliban, Afghan Taliban, or is this relationship heading towards a permanent rupture now?
No, it will not influence. Even in the best of days, the
Mhm.
type of influence that we had was a tactical one against the Soviets, for example, the Mujahideen. So whatever influence that, if you call it influence at all, but our at least aims were together, we were. With the Taliban, that saw some commonality of interest as long as the Americans are all. Otherwise, as for the Afghans are concerned, there is an independent country. They will take their own decisions. They will work in their interests, own interests, and in those interests, we also know that a country who is very important to them because they have the longest border with them,
Mhm.
where tribes straddle on both sides, which has been providing them, plenty of help, not only when they are under war, but otherwise too, the trade takes place. Even today, most of them, whenever their assets are here, their families are here, they'll choose Karachi for a number of reasons. We have enough number of Afghans here in this country under various, categories who continue to work for us as far as that country. So that is what the neighbors do. So the mutuality of interest will be worked out in due course if we act sensibly and if the Taliban also accept. So this is the condition. If people become foolish and stupid and they start talking about there is a very flawed concept which we call the national interest. There's no such thing as national interest. The interest is of the area, of the neighbors. If you take them account, that will be helpful.
Okay. So, over past 1 year almost, many months, Pakistan's decision to expel Afghan refugees, calling them illegal, and there has been sort of racism as well against them in overall Pakistani media and society. That has drawn significant backlash and seems, I think, this seems to have strained relations further. Was this decision, what do you think? Was this a miscalculation, and how do you think it will impact Pakistan's standing in the region? You
I've
know?
already said that I think that was a very big disaster, this type of a decision, from all points of view. Humanitarian, I've already mentioned. Also, bilaterally, it makes that difference. It was actually, but the worst thing is that you just find a scapegoat for your own problems. I have known the Afghan refugees here for 30 years. Their contact in the country was better than ours. They were being fleeced by our state. Even a policeman would take his share from them. These people, poor people, had to carry extra money because they had to pay that everywhere. But they were still here. I remember also those days when whenever we wanted to hire a truck, for example, one was said, "Are there any Afghan trucks around?" Because they were better, they were cheaper, they were more reliable. Now, that type of a relationship we have had, and we have given, by doing that, we provided more space to those people whom we did not want to have that type of influence.
Yeah.
I cannot think of any good thing that will happen because of our, or that this year in which the Afghans are seen. Or they have been threatened that they'll go back. The more will go back.
Mm-hmm.
We were mostly in this country, in Pakistan, most of us are the descendants of refugees, people who come from outside. We settled down. Our people here before us were so large-hearted, we accommodated us. And now, these couple of millions who've been there for 30, 40 years, we want them to go back. Where else does it happen?
Mm-hmm. Now, you have said this couple of times. You have mentioned China, Russia, and the regional connectivity that in your assessment is has gone better under the Taliban, under Afghanistan, under Taliban rule than ever. Um, the China, Russia, and even India are increasingly involved now in Afghanistan without having Pakistan as a conduit. So, do you think Pakistan has lost its strategic influence in Kabul? And if so, how can we recalibrate our foreign policy? I mean, looking at the regional connectivity, as you mentioned before, do you think that regional connectivity of Afghanistan with other nations, other countries, other regional countries, minus Pakistan, is in Pakistan's interest, and how should we recalibrate our foreign policy?
We are best positioned. Pakistan is best positioned to take care of the situation of Afghanistan because of the border, because of the history, because of geography. It's all up to us to make use of it. At no
So your
time,
sound is slightly distorted. Can you please speak a little up?
I said that we are best positioned
Mm-hmm.
to make use of this situation
Mm-hmm.
because of our past, because of geography, because of the fact that there are enough number of people on both sides speak the same language. We have more Pashtuns than there are there. The people in the north were also once upon a time great friends with us. So all of that is possible if we just have to decide or act in a sensible manner in which, regardless of what happened, that TTP is a minor thing as far as I'm concerned. Don't try and push the refugees. Taliban are going to welcome anyone, especially Pakistan. If we made those overtures, the border trade takes place even now. We call it smuggling, but it takes place now. You can regularize it. Is there any sense, if you want to win over the people, to stop their trucks at the borders and their fruits, fresh vegetables get spoiled? I just keep wondering how the states act. They normally act very foolishly, most of them. But in this particular case, no, most of them. The state, as I said, even in normal times, they're not known to act with wisdom, not taking care of their own people. India does not, Pakistan does not. There's so many that do not. In this particular case, all that one has to do is, if not for your own people, at least for the region and for your own security, you join hands. And we have enough number of allies in the region: China, Russia, Iran, Turkey, they're all there. Even India was dependent on us and still is dependent on us if they want to do something more substantial. We allowed their aid to go through, which was a good thing. And I have nothing against them because it helped the Afghans, the poor Afghans in distress. All these things is possible, and that is where the pivot in this particular case, other than besides the Taliban, the pivot policy, the pivot role can be played by Islamabad better than anyone else. So this is our asset. You only have to use.
Well, this is a very optimist note, and let's end on the optimist note rather than the bleak ones. I really hope that decision makers in Pakistan would be listening to this, and they, put their act together, and there we see better, betterment in the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan in the next months, and peace prevails. Thank you very much, General Durrani.
Hope, Marvi. For me, hope is not a policy. I know I can only talk about the potential that exists. And if people make a little sense, like for in the past, I think the people there have been very sensible, not only helping the resistance, but otherwise, our predecessors during Ayub Khan's days, for example, there was a move how to create a union between Pakistan and Afghanistan. It was not a merger, it was a FPAC is an old concept, and it had to speak for, and it was a Pakistani initiative. If it did not happen, one can always say that we were not capable of doing it. Otherwise, the concepts have always been there. FPAC, and later on, the same concept was also taken to Iran. At that time, it was Shah, and said, Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan can make that type of a absolutely good idea. And not only that, whenever one was asked, now who is going to head FPAC, the answer here for Pakistan was, of course, the king of Afghanistan, because that is the wiser thing to do. And when the Shah said who would head it, Bhutto said, "Sir, Your Majesty, you are the Shah, you are the Shah, king of kings." Meaning thereby that it is not. We may be the bigger of the largest country, we may be responsible, but we are not looking for an exclusive role. We want you people to be quite happy that your interests are going to look after. You can come and head it because it's going to be in the benefit of everybody. So the ideas have been there. Even now, I would say the potential is there, the need is there. If you find the people who can implement it, it's going to be all right.
Yeah. So the potential is there, the need is there. Let's find some political will to make things better. Thank you very much, General. It's a pleasure.
Okay, take care.
Take care.